people have criticized Rawls' theory of justice from what is called a communitarian point of view. Communitarian point of view. And Michael Sandel comes under communitarian critic of Rawls' theory of justice. He gave his critic in this book, Liberalism and the Limits of Justice, written in 1982. He was under the influence of philosopher Charles Taylor, who was critic of seeing self as isolated from the community. And Sandel takes up these ideas and examines Rawls' theory of justice. Let us first see what is communitarianism. The term communitarian was coined in 1841 by John Goodwin Barnby in reference to the utopian socialists who experimented with communal styles of life, like Robert Owen. But this term didn't gain much currency till 1980s. Communitarian sometimes is identified with collectivist approach to society, because of which some don't want to be called communitarians, and Sandel is one among them. But because of his critic of looking at self in an isolated way, his criticism comes under communitarian critic of liberalism and more specifically Rawls' theory of justice. But before discussing Sandel's theory of or his critic of Rawls' theory, let us see what Sandel thinks to be Rawls' theory. First, what does Sandel say about original position? Sandel says this. He says, sparing all but essentials, the original position works like this. It invites us to imagine the principles we would choose to govern our society if we were to choose them in advance, before we knew the particular persons we would be, whether rich or poor, strong or weak, lucky or unlucky, before we even knew our interests, our aims, or even conception of the good. And these principles, the ones we would choose in that imaginary situation, are the principles of justice. What is more, if it works, they are the principles that do not presuppose any particular ends. So, original position is the one which operates in a veil of ignorance, where we don't know whether we are rich or poor, strong or poor, lucky or unlucky, not even our interests, and what we choose are the principles of justice, which means Sandel is explaining original position in the way it is usually understood. There is no disagreement here. Next, what principles would choose in the original position? He again says that sparing all but essentials, once again, Rawls' two principles of justice are these: basic equal liberties for all, and second, only those social and economic inequalities that benefit the least advantaged members of the society. So, liberties, they take precedence over anything that brings inequality but that inequality to benefit the least advantaged. So, that is nothing but difference principle. So, Sandel's statement of Rawls' principles are also agreeable. Sandel is not disagreeing on this. But where does Sandel disagree? His disagreement is on, we can say, on the original position. On the original position. Sandel argues who are making choices in the original position. They don't know whether they are rich or poor, man or woman, lucky or unlucky. It means they do not have any attributes. They are denuded of attributes. Denuded of attributes. When they don't have those attributes, what kind of decisions they can make that constitute justice? A person has so many features, a normal person, and he is connected to the community. He brings community sense of good and justice and things like that. But Rawls is removing them, removing each trait. So, what is it that this person can, deprived of all these attributes, what is it that he can decide? That's Sandel's position. So, this is it, he is saying that at the heart of this ethic lies a vision of the person that both inspires and also undoes. What we do presuppose is a certain picture of the person, of the way we must be if we are beings for whom justice is the first virtue. This is the picture of unencumbered self. A self understood as prior to and independent of purposes and ends. Unencumbered self doesn't have the attributes, doesn't know what is good, and doesn't have any ends, any criteria, and so what will it choose? After all, a self has a history, has likes and certain ideals, and it is a part of community. So, what is this self which is not encumbered? Encumbered means burdened with or restricted with certain features. So, Sandel objection is the kind of the person who is making these choices based on whom Rawls is deriving his principles. Sandel's objection is to the conception of the person in the original position. What does Rawls say on Sandel's critic? Rawls addresses variety of criticisms in an article titled Justice as Fairness, Political and Not Metaphysical. In that he addresses variety of criticisms, but on not in detail on Sandel, but this is what he said on Sandel in a footnote. I think Michael Sandel is mistaken in supposing that the original position involves a conception of a self shorn of all attributes, shorn of its contingently given attributes. I can't discuss these criticisms in detail. So, the idea that the self in original position doesn't have the attributes is not correct. That is Rawls' explanation, but he didn't discuss the details. what I would like to do is elaborate on Rawls' position and how Sandel's critic I think is misplaced. This is how I see it. This is how I see it. I am not saying this is what Rawls explained in detail. See, original position is this. If you take an example, original position is something like this. See, you don't know whether you are going to be a man or a woman. But tell me, in what way gender relations should be organized? Gender relations should be organized. When you don't know whether you are a man or a woman, how would gender relations be organized? This is simplified original position. What it is assumed to do is that when you don't know whether it is man or woman, then you can't choose patriarchy, because if you choose patriarchy and if you are born as a woman, then you lose. So you will reject patriarchy. But what is it that you will accept? Probably you will accept gender equality. This is an example. In the same way, you don't know whether you are going to be rich or poor. And tell me, what kind of relations should exist between rich and poor? Should rich keep what all they got with themselves? If you know you are going to be rich, probably you may say, yes, they have right to property and they deserve, after all they worked. But when you think you may not be rich and you may be poor because you don't have the sufficient skill set to make you rich, then what are you likely to say? Definitely you are not likely to say, let rich keep all, and maybe you will say, I should get something from the rich. In fact, Rawls said people don't want equality. They don't want equality. That is egalitarianism. People want to be rich as well as poor if they are not able to earn, but they want rich people to give something to the poor, or the system to work in such a way poor are benefited, which is called difference principle. So Rawls thinks that difference principle will be acceptable when they do not know whether they are going to be rich or poor. It is like that. So original position is a device to eliminate bias, and the unusual assumption, and which is quite true, is that if you don't know your position and what you agree to can be taken as justice. And Rawls thinks that when the people do not know their positions, they cannot say things that are favorable to a particular position, so they are likely to arrive at the principles whom can be regarded as principles of justice. So original position is a way of removing the biases. Put simply, you don't know whether it is you going to be a boy or a girl, and then choose what kind of gender relations are just. You don't know whether you are going to be rich or poor, then choose what kind of class relations are best. Okay, but it is not that one doesn't have these things. One is not a boy or a girl or a rich or a poor. It's not like that. He may be be a rich boy or a rich girl or a poor boy or a poor girl. But when he is making a choice on gender relations, he doesn't know whether it is a boy or a girl. When he is making a choice on class relations, he doesn't know whether he is rich or poor. It is supposed to work like that. So, self in original position is not shorn of the attributes. It is simply a device of eliminating the bias. It is removing one variable and then see what a person chooses when one doesn't know which position he is going to be in. So it is not that a denuded self is assumed or a self shorn of attributes is assumed. It is a self which doesn't know this position, so it can think and then arrive at. And Sandel says the self doesn't know, there is no prior conception of good, there is no prior conception of ends, because if you already have a prior conception of justice and good, then you are not making an independent choice. So Rawls felt that even this is not to be. If the religion says this is the way just society is, and if they are making the choices on the basis of that religion, then to the extent religion is prejudiced, you are not getting what you would otherwise think as a free individual. So that is why it doesn't have a sense of goodness, already formed convictions on justice, and doesn't know these positions, and then what is it that they would decide? And there appears to be some consensus on what people would decide under that circumstances. And of course, Rawls is checking for this consensus in a constitutional democracy, not in a tribal society, not in a primitive ancient society or a medieval society. These principles of justice are what people as free and equal citizens would arrive at. So Sandel's understanding, I think, is misplaced.